Welcome to a special edition of The Beat. We begin with a measurable fact in America right now. Things are not okay. Troops in the streets, federal agents killing in broad daylight, President Trump openly defying laws, DOJ abusing powers against his enemies list as Trump pockets hundreds of millions, stoking questions about whether he's acting for the public, himself, or some purchased foreign agenda. This is the State of the Union as the U.S. marks over 1 year since Trump was sworn back in. This is a time to assess the president's policies in a typical era. But this is no typical era. So tonight, our special report is on how America's bedrock guardrails are holding up. First, in government and among the wider public. How the government checks are doing and how the American people are meeting the challenge. Now, Trump's rushed, rule-busting governing can actually overwhelm the system, making it harder to even see what's happening over this past year or where his plots worked or failed. So this new report tracks each key guardrail. And I'm going to walk you through this. Some guardrails are holding up, marked green, like lawsuits. Some are a mixed bag, a mixed record, like how we can measure the police military complex trying to patrol us at home. That's yellow, for example, and others are failing, like the DOJ, clearly marked red. Now, for our democracy, if you see the glass half empty, you'll notice some of the red. Others may find encouragement in the green. But I want to share one more truth before we dig into this special report tonight. Donald Trump tries to scramble any limits on power with spectacle, shock, and awe, a playbook to instill fear or hopelessness or both, so that giving in is pitched as some sort of inevitable next step. Reality actually shows the opposite. People standing up, fighting, and winning even against lying, cheating, violence, and that convicted sedition. And against a political figure who, remember, got fewer votes in 2 of his 3 elections, lost the midterms last time, loses in the courts a lot, and was the first president ever indicted, along with 8 of his aides getting convicted.
President Trump acknowledging that Joe Biden will be president.
For the first time in U.S. history, a former president is facing federal criminal charges.
But did not take responsibility for the mob of his supporters who breached the Capitol.
President Trump taking the oath of office for the second time in the Capitol Rotunda.
More than 1,500 pardons or commutations in all for the people who violently stormed the U.S. Capitol.
President Trump says nearly every federal agency in the U.S. government could fall under the scrutiny of Elon Musk.
Jimmy Kimmel back on air overnight.
The hard work of improving New Yorkers' lives starts now.
This is the most American thing that you can do. Protest and speak for what you believe in.
Those are the stakes. Our report now begins with government guardrails. The founders were most concerned that the new democracy could be hijacked by a wannabe king. And they made checks inside the executive, staff bound by the Constitution, not a politician's whims. Officials must resist orders that break the law. And the epicenter for that is DOJ, which did patrol Trump in his first term, even appointing special counsel Mueller because Trump's team could not investigate itself. Now the DOJ is failing that independence this term. Some officials have resisted orders to lie in court or abuse power against Trump's enemies, even resigning, but the line hasn't held. Trump's former personal lawyers, Bondi and Blanche, run the DOJ like Trump's political machine, probing rivals in cases so weak, several dropped long before trial. New plots against the Fed chair this month, new probes of Minnesota Democrats added to this chart breaking today. And even 1 or 2 questionable cases of illegal selective prosecution, that's bad. But right now, it's 14 such cases. The very enemies list Bondi disclaimed under oath. So our reporting finds the DOJ's internal guardrail is failing. The red you see here. Trump doing in 1 year this term what he never did in his first 4 years, breaking the DOJ into an unlawful arm of his agenda. And as Russia and countless autocracies show, if the government can get away with indicting anyone for nothing, then you don't have a full opposition or a full democracy. Then there's the use of soldiers and militarized policing on American soil. Trump seizing National Guards without their governors, deploying ICE agents in places that voted against him, leading to escalation, to violence, and the ICE agent killing Renee Good. Now, judges have slowly trimmed some of those deployments. But remember, the founders devoted the Third Amendment to stop soldiers from being forced onto citizens. Federal law bars the military from policing at home. And yet the military has been deployed in 6 cities and counting. This guardrail is clearly faltering, and Trump's floating even broader emergency powers, or the Insurrection Act. Now, the courts are the ultimate authority in our system. They limit politicians' power. They resolve what the law says. They're the last word on elections. And I want to show you, if you really measure it, the court's record this past year is mixed. They've tangled with DOJ lawyers. They've clearly ruled against some of Trump's lawless moves. We count about 13 major rulings against him. But the Supreme Court has also allowed, even rewarded, Trump ploys to evade the law or run out the clock. And so that's a measure there. Then you have something we all remember: judges are just on the receiving end. But the doors to the courthouse right now are still open and working. There's been a flood of lawsuits against Trump actions in year one. And if you count up and actually look at this, something he may want to distract you from, about half have won steps to slow or block unlawful acts, with many still pending. Those 358 major
is really driving this sell-off here.
Yeah, so I think this is very much the Trump playbook. He likes to come out with something really strong that he can then, he assesses the market reaction. He sees, what the people that he's, competing with in the global sphere has to say about it. And then what he has done is and the reason why we've seen this situation sort of stay in check during the first year of his term has been because he's had the willingness to come in and, make compromises and scale back the original announcements that he makes. And he really he wants to threaten like the worst case scenario for people and then sort of walk it back slowly. And I think, what you're seeing here is, these are some pretty extreme tariffs. He's saying he's going to put 10% tariffs starting on February 1st on 8 NATO members who have come out in defense of Greenland, and so that would raise the effective tax rate quite a bit. If that were to actually go through, it would of course have to be approved and go into place, and there were a lot of steps where it would actually have to materialize. And so this is just like that first step, kind of the punch in the mouth. And Trump is at Davos this week. He's going to address everyone on Wednesday. And I think there's the reason why you mentioned futures were down more overnight than they are right now is because I would imagine people are expecting him to come in a little bit on this, and they recognize this as sort of the game of chicken that he often plays with the tariffs.
All right. So Kelly and I, Joe, were just talking about the marking of the first year of President Trump's second term in office. A lot of promises that he made to improve the economy. The unemployment rate is in a healthy range. But of course, as we know, the cost of groceries, housing, energy is all up.
And Donald Trump has said repeatedly that he wants to take Greenland because he's upset he didn't get the Nobel Peace Prize, because he's upset that he is not being treated well, because it's something that he needs for his ego. That's just not something I can actually imagine any other president, even if they thought it, saying out loud.
So, Ron, the markets have looked past a lot of the stuff that Donald Trump has done recently. Not so much today. I'm looking at the front page of CNBC. Dow drops 500 points as Trump's Greenland scheme sparks U.S. Capitol fight. Fear of global trade war. Why now? Why this?
Well, I think, I'm going to take the stock market to be less important because this is really just a relatively small decline. 1% is within, the bounds of what a regular day could look like. But clearly the markets are nervous. What's happening with gold, silver, and U.S. Treasury bond yields may be more important. Gold is skyrocketing to new all-time highs. There's a flight to safety into that. Bond yields are climbing, which means investors are backing away from U.S. Treasuries. And that capital flight that you mentioned, if global investors start to pull money from the United States, it can have a profound effect on the level of interest rates, the value.
Other countries in the Middle East and doing everything else, it is the job of the Congress to have something to say about it. The trade war that he started, that is the authority of the Congress to address as it relates to tariffs. They've not done that. And so I think voters are going to punish House and Senate Republicans for their failure to provide a check and balance.
Chris, what's interesting here is Steve Bannon told us all of this in 2015 when he said the plan was to deconstruct the administrative state. This is exactly what the Trump administration, in its second iteration, is now doing. This has been known.
Well, that's one promise kept.
10 years. Yeah, it has one promise kept.
No, seriously, it may not be on the economy.
Right.
It may not be on, he's going to get rid of a bunch of problems on day one, but that is a promise kept.
Yep. And it's detrimental to the global order. They have themselves said they wanted to upend the post-World War II order as it has been in place since 1945, and that's exactly what's happening now. Now, whether or not markets revolt and Republicans revolt with sufficient strength.
Limited, and he will not be the next president. They have no idea if it will be someone like Trump's vice president. And there's just a sense, to put it in the context of today's news, that Europeans do need to do more to prepare for a world in which you have a United States that is potentially willing to, for instance, blow up NATO.
New polling ahead of the midterm election shows Democrats are feeling highly motivated to get out and vote later this year, and that could be bad news for Republicans who are hanging on to a slim majority in the House. So let's go to CNN's chief data analyst, Harry Enton. What exactly are these poll numbers telling us, Harry?
Yeah, oh my goodness gracious. I can't believe it. The first year of the Trump administration already pretty much done. We got a midterm election coming up in November. And what are the poll results showing us? Well, that generic congressional ballot, right? That's matching up the Democrats versus the Republicans and the choice for Congress. And what do we see? We see the Democrats with an advantage on that generic ballot. Right now, they're ahead by far.
Many education systems around the world have gone through periods of significant reform. In some cases, formal oversight mechanisms were established decades ago to correct structural imbalances and ensure that all students had access to fair educational opportunities. These measures were designed not only to address immediate concerns, but also to guide long-term improvement. Over time, conditions change, policies are updated, leadership evolves, and outcomes improve. As progress becomes visible, questions naturally arise about whether long-standing oversight is still required. This creates a complex decision point. On one hand, continued oversight can provide accountability and ensure that gains are preserved. On the other hand, maintaining external controls indefinitely may feel unnecessary if systems appear to be functioning well on their own. To understand this balance, it helps to look at why oversight was introduced in the first place. Oversight measures are typically implemented when systems fail to provide equal access or consistent outcomes. They establish clear expectations, monitoring processes, and corrective actions. Their purpose is not punishment, but improvement. Improvement takes time. Educational outcomes do not change overnight. Progress often unfolds across generations of students, educators, and administrators. This is why some oversight measures remain in place for many years. As systems mature, visible indicators of progress emerge. Schools adopt inclusive practices, curricula are updated, facilities improve, and student performance becomes more consistent across different communities. These changes reflect sustained effort rather than short-term fixes. At this stage, communities often begin to reassess. They ask whether existing safeguards have achieved their goals and whether the system now has the capacity to maintain fairness independently. This reassessment is not purely technical. It involves values, trust, and lived experience. Community members, educators, and families may have different perspectives on what success looks like and how it should be measured. Some view long-term oversight as a safeguard. They believe it has played a key role in producing positive outcomes and worry that removing it could allow old problems to return. From this perspective, oversight is seen as a stabilizing force. Others view oversight as a milestone rather than a permanent feature. They argue that progress should eventually lead to autonomy, with local systems demonstrating their ability to uphold standards without external direction. Both perspectives are rooted in concern for students. The difference lies in how risk is assessed. One side prioritizes caution, while the other emphasizes confidence in current structures. Another important factor is institutional memory. Long-term oversight creates documentation, processes, and accountability habits. These institutional practices often become embedded in the system, influencing decision-making even if formal oversight ends. This embedded culture can be a sign of success. When fairness and inclusion become part of everyday operations, they no longer rely solely on external mandates. However, culture must be maintained. Even strong cultures require leadership, training, and reflection to remain effective. This is why transitions away from oversight are often gradual rather than abrupt. Gradual transitions allow systems to demonstrate readiness. They may involve periodic reviews, benchmarks, or phase changes rather than immediate removal of all requirements. This approach balances confidence with caution. Measurement plays a key role in this process. Data on student outcomes, resource distribution, and program effectiveness helps determine whether equity is being sustained. Transparent reporting builds trust and informs decision-making. Trust is central. Community trust grows when outcomes align with stated goals over time. When trust is strong, stakeholders are more comfortable with reduced oversight. Another important concept is equity versus uniformity. Equity focuses on ensuring that all students receive what they need to succeed, which may not always look the same for everyone. Oversight measures often encourage systems to recognize and address these differences thoughtfully. As systems evolve, equity strategies may become more sophisticated. Rather than broad mandates, they may involve targeted support, individualized programs, and adaptive teaching methods. This evolution reflects learning. Systems learn from experience, refine approaches, and adjust based on evidence. Long-term oversight can accelerate this learning by providing structure and accountability. When considering whether to end oversight, decision-makers often examine sustainability. Sustainability asks whether positive outcomes can continue without external enforcement. It looks at leadership capacity, funding stability, and community engagement. Strong local leadership is essential. Leaders who understand the system's history and values are better positioned to maintain progress. Leadership continuity supports long-term stability. Professional development also matters. Educators need ongoing training to adapt to changing student needs and educational practices. Investment in people supports lasting equity. Community engagement reinforces accountability. When families and community members are involved, they help uphold standards and identify concerns early. Engagement creates shared responsibility. Another consideration is symbolic significance. Ending a long-standing oversight measure can symbolize progress and maturity. It can signal that a system has moved beyond past challenges. However, symbols must match reality. If symbolic change occurs before systems are fully ready, it can undermine confidence. Careful timing ensures that symbolism reflects substance. This is why many reviews include both quantitative and qualitative assessment. Numbers tell part of the story, but lived experience provides context. Listening to educators, students, and families adds depth to evaluation. Evaluation should be ongoing. Even after oversight ends, systems benefit from self-review and external feedback. Continuous improvement does not end with autonomy. Autonomy and accountability can coexist. Local control does not mean absence of standards. It means ownership of responsibility. Ownership encourages innovation. When systems feel trusted, they may experiment with new approaches to support students more effectively. Innovation can further enhance outcomes. At the same time, safeguards remain important. Clear policies, transparent reporting, and open communication